Welcome to Kitchen Sink Dharma. There's a famous quote from Aristotle which is, "Knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom." And like a lot of people, I started the process of really getting to know myself, I think quite late in life. I've been on this planet for around half a century. Now, Buddhist teachings have a lot to say about who you are, about your true nature, and what exactly there is to get to know. And you might hear something like this, that there's no fixed or permanent self, that you're the temporary changing coming together of consciousness and feelings, processes, a body that's impermanent, that you're intimately connected to and part of the universe, and even though your habits of mind and personal narratives feel like they're you, they're not, they're just processes, they're just phenomena that arise and disappear, dependent on conditions. But I don't think that's the whole story. I think each of us knows that we have a distinct identity. And for most of us, there's a sense of continuity that runs through from our childhood. And even if we are impermanent, doesn't mean we don't matter or that we're not unique. And it doesn't mean there isn't anything to know. And that's what today's about. What the question I'm interested in today is this. Once you actually strip away just the noise, the habits of the mind, and the layers of ego and the grasping and the wanting and all the dissatisfaction that goes on in our minds every day, what's actually left? What's actually still there? Now, when we meditate, the mind doesn't always cooperate, but with some practice and over time, it can learn to slow down. And we can find that we're able to experience a certain amount of stillness, at least some of the time. So when we quiet the mind and the stream of thoughts and feelings does start to subside, what we get is a glimpse of what else is there. And we notice that there's also awareness, it's just simple awareness. So there might still be thoughts and feelings and sensations, but it's possible to simply observe them and hold them in awareness. And just to allow them to arise and disappear without actually identifying with them. So our minds are not just made up of these sort of streams of self-referential chatter. There's also awareness, and it's not neutral awareness, it's not cold and clinical. It's an awareness that actually cares. You could describe it, if you like, as loving awareness. This isn't just wishful thinking saying this, you can actually see this for yourself. You can sense it, you can experience it. In fact, the only really way that you can understand this is experientially, because language and concepts have a real limitation here. So when we pay attention to our experience, the first thing we probably notice is the whole flow of thoughts and emotions and sensations just running through the mind. But if we slow down and listen carefully, we can start to perceive the whole spacious field of awareness in which all of these things arise. And we can see that it's always there, it's ever present, it's always open, it's always at peace. The actual awareness is quite peaceful. And stillness can act as a gateway to sensing this loving awareness that's actually closer to our true nature. Now, none of this is actually visible when we're tangled up in our thoughts. But with stillness, when we quiet the mind, we start to realize something that we know already, something that's already there on the edge of consciousness. And that is that we don't actually have to protect our sense of self. Any feelings about our sense of self that we have of insufficiency and separateness and so on are just feelings. Because really we're all a part of existence, we belong in this world. And our essential nature, our basic goodness is always there. It might get forgotten, it might get clouded in confusion, but it never goes away. And this is where we start to free ourselves. This is where we start to wake up and see there's no need for self-criticism. There's no need for a sense of insufficiency. There's no need for shame when we actually know who and what we really are. Now, when we're growing up as children, we all go through various stages of development. And it's important for all of us, necessary for all of us to develop an ego. Ego development is absolutely normal, it's healthy. But we have the capacity to grow and develop further. And this has always been known, it was recognized in Asia at the time of the Buddha, it was recognized by the ancient Greek philosophers. It's been recognized by countless poets and thinkers and spiritual teachers over the years. And of course, there's not just one model of human development. There's an awful lot. There's many models of human development. I was listening to Bill Plotkin, who's a writer and depth psychologist, recently. He was talking about maturity. And he said it's not so much about getting a job and owning a house and having children and so on. Maturity is about knowing your place in the ecosystem, actually knowing your contribution, and understanding what you truly value, understanding what really matters to you, and feeling totally at home in the whole web of life. So maybe maturity is about knowing your unique place, your purpose. And if we accept that definition of maturity, then it's really obvious that our culture is not really a mature one. It's not conducive to maturity. It really encourages us to feel separate. It encourages us to view everything as either hostile or desirable or boring. And we have to be able to get beyond this if we're going to mature. It's not really who we are. It's not really who we are. And how do we figure all of this out? Because it's not taught in schools. We don't get a memo. And to me, I think it's about being receptive. It's about maybe allowing some stillness, some openness into our lives. Maybe allowing some inner listening. Because when we're actually receptive, when we're open, things just land. Insight just lands. So it might be something that we glimpse. It might be something in a line of poetry or a phrase in a song. It might be a passage in a book. Might just be something someone says that just lands, that just resonates for us. Or it might be something that we can find in the body. If we just stop, if we're just prepared to stop what we're doing and listen. It might just be a felt sense in the body. If we don't try too hard, if we just listen and allow it in. So here's an example. If you really pay attention to your experience, maybe when you're meditating, walking, you'll notice it's actually quite painful to feel separate. Withholding and feeling separate actually hurts. It's not a comfortable feeling. We put so much energy into the idea that we're separate. But every time we act against our true nature, it actually hurts. Every time we contract into self-centeredness, we actually feel it as a discomfort in the body. Every time we view the world through the lens of fear and lack and neediness and threat, it's not comfortable. And this embodied experience is available to guide us here. Our inner knowing. It helps to connect us with others, and it helps us to see that connecting with others makes us actually happier and more content. Sharing our time, our energy, our money, and so on actually correlates with our well-being. And you don't need to read a book or listen to a talk actually to appreciate this. You actually know it. You know it in your bones. The body holds a huge amount of information and wisdom and meaning. I talk about a felt sense. I mean a way of getting in touch with something that you can't necessarily put into words. Now, one thing you might notice when the mind is stilled and the ego starts to subside a bit is this loving awareness, this loving presence. It's not always visible. It's often obscured by brain fog or busyness. But it's always there. It's actually always there. And seeing this gets you closer to knowing your true nature. So when you look a bit deeper, you perceive that the narrator in our head isn't actually who we are. It's not us. The voice with which we judge ourselves isn't actually who we are. It's not our true nature. It's just a habit of mind. It's just noise. Waves that appear on the surface. Actually knowing your true nature is a pointer towards knowing your place in the world and knowing how you can serve the world, knowing how you can live well in the world. And it means accessing something that's a bit bigger than our tight, constricted sense of self. It'd be something that's actually universal. And there's lots of ways of looking at this. Many different metaphors, if you like, many different teachers saying things that are seemingly contradictory. But it's really just people trying to put something into words that can't easily be expressed in language. So I would say don't be put off by the differences between different traditions and belief systems. This is just about finding a path that works for you, finding a path that allows you to serve the world and to get past the preoccupations of the ego and actually see yourself as something bigger, part of something bigger. I actually believe we all have it within ourselves to awaken. Everyone has the capacity to become awakened, to become enlightened, if you like. In Mahayana Buddhism, they talk about Buddha nature. This idea that we have this seed in us. We all have the seed in us that has the potential to grow. Ordinary people, like all of us, have Buddha nature. And Buddha nature isn't a better version of the self. It's more like the true nature of our hearts and minds. And we might not be aware of it, but it's right here in all of us. And I'm not saying there's nothing to do or you're already there. There is actually a role here for effort, for wise effort. And there's a role for kindness and care for our own suffering. But I really believe as humans we have this innate desire, this innate potential, but also desire to awaken, to grow, to evolve. And there's no need to treat this as a self-improvement project. It doesn't have to be another reason to feel inadequate. You could maybe think of it as an evolution, a deepening into awareness. So don't think you have to postpone waking up because you're not good enough yet. You don't have to be a perfect being to connect with who you really are. You just have to be willing to move beyond your fear to see what's on the other side, to see what's underneath, if you like. Sometimes we put so much energy into hiding our goodness, we can only see what's wrong with us. In fact, there's a lot more right with us than there is wrong with us. And in the moments when you see beyond the surface, that's what becomes your reality. Not just the ticker tape of thoughts rushing past. And that completely changes how you perceive the world. So I'm going to read this out. It's from the Sufi poet Rumi. There is another world inside this one. No words can describe it. There is living, but no fear of death. There is spring, but never a turn to autumn. There are legends and stories coming from the walls and ceilings. Even the rocks and trees recite poetry. Here an owl becomes a peacock, a wolf becomes a beautiful shepherd. To change the scenery, change your mood. To move around, just will it. Stand for a moment and look at a desert of thorns. It becomes a flowery garden. Now to me this is about how we make our world. And when you take the short journey from self-consciousness to self-awareness, what you'll meet is actually far more radiant than you think. When you perceive your true nature, you actually fall in love with your world. I'd like to finish just with a couple more lines from Rumi, and as I said before, you don't have to listen too hard or analyze, maybe just listen with the body. Just see if any of this lands. So Rumi wrote, "Without love, all worship is a burden, all dancing is a chore, all music is mere noise. All the rain of heaven may fall into the sea. Without love, not one drop would become a pearl." So thank you for listening. I'll see you next time.